4th and 5th. Figured I'd go over how I paint my helmets, armor, all my stuff, and a little of the materials I use and the techniques I use. So, I've got a pallet cast. I've already cleaned it up, trimmed it, done a little bit of the paint on the breather area where I want it to look like rubber. I don't want it to have the texture on it like the rest of the stuff's going to have. Got all my paints ready, which we have a silver to base coat it for the battle damage, a tan color for the overall color, the texture I use to spray all my casts first to give them a cast iron look or a cast metal look, and mold builder. It's just a pretty cheap liquid latex rubber. It's worthless for building molds, but it's really good for masking off areas on your model because it peels off easily without damaging the paint underneath. Also, cheap paintbrush. It's kind of a one-shot deal. You're going to kill it with a mold builder. Our detail pen, painter's tape, sharp knife. So what I have to do is tape off the area here I want to keep the smooth black and get ready to prime it with the texture paint. Okay, now that we're all taped off, we can take the Rust-Oleum texture. Doesn't matter what color you get, we're painting over it anyway. And we don't need really a very thick coat, but we need to coat everything with it. Everything you want textured, you have to put a decent sized coat of it over. This stuff is pretty nasty and messy, so don't do it near anything you don't want texture on. This also is really good for making a rough casting look great. Paint covers a lot of evil. Okay, now we let this dry completely before we start the next phase, which is adding the masking for the battle damage. Okay, well, I forgot to mention a while ago, before we add the battle damage masking, we have to add the silver to show up for battle damage. So just duplicate color, aluminum, that's what I like to use. It seems to not lose its shine as bad as some of the others when you're peeling the masking off. It doesn't dull out when you clear coat your helmet. And you don't really need a heavy coat of this, you just need a light coat to show up where you want the damage. But I don't know exactly where I'm putting my damage yet, so I'm going to go ahead and paint the whole thing. And I always start with the bottom first with any paint, because once you set it down, if you mess up the bottom, it's easier to touch up the bottom and not worry about it. Now that we have the silver on, you can really see the texture. I know I've seen some of the older style helmets, the new Kevlars that the military uses, I believe are relatively smooth, but the older style helmets, especially the old stew pots that they used in World War II and Korean War, were cast in a sand casting mold. Some of them were. And they have a real grainy texture to it, almost like a cast iron texture. So that's what I'm trying to replicate, because it looks more like a cast piece than just a plastic piece when you do that. So as soon as the aluminum paint dries, with the help of TV Magic and a heat gun, here in just a second we're going to add the masking for the battle damage and start putting the base colors on. Okay, now that our aluminum paint is dried, I'm going to take a little bit of the mold builder on the brush, just use it straight. And you don't have to be real artistic with this stuff, just kind of dab it and put it on here. what you want to try to do is put it in places that you would see wear. Where it would see, banging your head into something like a bulkhead on a ship would give you scuffs and scratches all over the top. Well, taking your helm off and dropping it down onto a bench or onto the deck or something would give you chips and scrapes along any of the sharp edges. And this stuff doesn't have to be really super thick, because any of it is going to get on there, is going to keep the paint from sticking to that area. Okay, for the top coat, now that all of our masking is dry, semi-dry, you can still see a few white spots on there, but nothing's going to hurt anything. I like to use the Krylon camouflage colors because they're a ultra flat. There's pretty much no sheen to them at all when you get done. They look more military. But I'm going to do this one khaki, the same as my original helmet. I just like the way that looks. More of a desert camo style. And for right now, we're not going to do any masking on any of the black areas, because it's easier to mask off the main helmet, the main colors, than it is to mask off all the little black areas. You want to use light coats at first until you get it tacked up. Okay, now that our base coat is dried, and you don't want to try it when it's sticky or when it's a little tacky. You want to wait till it's really dry, because otherwise you're going to be peeling it right off the top of the base color, the silver underneath. What I have to do is tape off all of the khaki color from the rim area and all the jaw area that's going to be black. All this under here has to be taped off, or is going to be black also. And since we've run out of the flat black, I am going to try this one with a hammered black. Over the texture, it shouldn't be too glossy, and once I put the dull top coat, clear coat over the top of it, you should never see that it's actually a hammered paint. Of course, it might turn out nice and we like it.